You're listening to this city's finest podcast about the city that this man loves. This is Toronto Mic'd.
What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1681 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Yes, we are open. An award-winning podcast from Moneris, hosted by FOTM Al Grego. Silverwax.ca. Use the promo code TorontoMike10 and save 10% at checkout. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Iones, sponsored by Fusion Corp Construction Management Inc. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, making his highly anticipated Toronto Mike debut, it's Devin Heroux. Can you say your last name for me, Devin?
You're close.
Heroux.
Hey, everybody needs a hero.
There's a hero. That's Mariah Carey. Dun, 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 inside
you know
your heart.
what? We're finally here. We're finally here.
Well, we're somewhere, but say your last name for me.
Heroux.
I didn't do it. I don't think I was
You
even
were close. You were
I said
close.
Heroux. It's Heroux. I apologize
Hurrah.
to you. Why
Hurrah.
not change it, like anglicize that so it's just hero?
Oh, you got to ask my Saskatchewan family about that. You know when
But
people...
there's no French people in Saskatchewan.
Well, there are in Prudhomme.
Where's Prudhomme?
Spell it for me.
Prudhome.
Yeah. Homme.
Oh,
Prudhomme.
I'm 0 for 2. I'm not having a good afternoon here. Devin, tell me, so this is a French part of Saskatchewan?
Yeah, I think there were a lot of people French-speaking people who settled in Saskatchewan, and so Prudhomme.
Like, we don't consider Saskatchewan a hotbed of Francophone activity.
We do not. Once upon a time, I was speaking French fluently. I was in France, spoke French in high school, went on a French exchange, and then had nobody to speak French with in Saskatchewan.
And you lost it.
I've lost
because
it.
you were the only French speaker in the entire province.
I was not in Prudhomme. We're giving a lot of love to Prudhomme today, Mike.
2 M's in Prudhomme, by the way, in case you were curious. Hey, so Devin, I'm excited to have you here.
Yeah.
Because I am a massive Olympics fanatic.
Amazing.
Like, I watch everything
Yeah.
in the Olympics, even events I would never consider watching, like through the rest of the 4-year cycle or whatever.
Right.
I'm glued to during the Olympics.
Yeah.
So, of course, if you're an Olympics fan in this country, you're a Devin fan.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's like they
Thank
go
you.
together.
I love it. I love how my life, Mike, has evolved to this point where I get to be inextricably tied to the Olympics because
How'd you pull that off? How'd you pull that caper off?
I honestly wake up with a fear of God of what am I going to do today every single day. So I think maybe that's how I pulled it off.
Do you have imposter syndrome?
I do every single day.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Because I think I got a bit of it this morning. Because, okay, so this morning at about 6:20 a.m.,
Yeah.
I'm down here.
Yeah.
I'm connecting via WebEx to CNN this morning.
That happened today.
Today. So that was
Right.
this morning.
Yeah.
And I'm connecting, and I'm like, oh, this is like the second time in 6 weeks or something. I was the official Canadian correspondent to talk about Trump's threats to make us his the 51st state,
Right.
and to talk about the election today.
Yeah.
And I have this moment of basically, and I think it's a pretty rational moment, which is, how the hell did I end up getting this call? Like, you're better to get this call.
No, you are.
Tell me why.
Because you are perfectly situated for this moment in time because of your 1,579,000 billion.
1,681.
Right, that is
That's your number.
extraordinary.
How did it take us so long to make this happen? Like, I feel like...
Because I'm never here.
Yeah. Okay, so much to discuss, but I can't get into it all yet. Like, we're going to talk about how you ended up at CBC doing this, like, amazing. Like, you have one of the greatest jobs in the world.
It's really cool.
Like, when was your last international trip?
Well, just a few weeks ago.
Where'd you go?
TD Garden in Boston for the World Figure Skating Championships. Did I think my life would take me to the World Figure Skating Championships? No. But do I love figure skating? Do I love the drama of figure skating?
Who won? Like, who is the male and the female?
Wow.
Tell me who won.
It was a massive success for the Americans at a time when the Americans needed massive success.
I don't want them to have massive
Well,
success.
listen, Alyssa Liu,
Okay.
19 years old, retired a year and a half ago. Are we dinging? Are you?
That's
dinging?
you. I don't ding like that. Like,
Sorry.
I know my dings.
That's embarrassing.
Okay, that's a
I never
Devin
have
ding.
that on. That's a Devin ding.
You know what? Everyone knows their own dings, right? So when you're out and about, you don't even react.
I
unless
never
it's,
have my ding on, so I can't believe that happened. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I don't think I heard that ding when you were poolside. Okay,
True.
talking to Summer McIntosh.
Well, Summer is swimming in Fort Lauderdale at the TYR Series this weekend, and I'm predicting that she might be posting some of her fastest times ever because she's just coming off a 3-week altitude training camp in France. Few people know that. When you
now lots of people know
now
that.
many
Cat's
people,
out of the bag.
Cat's out of the bag. And when you come back to Earth from altitude, you feel like you're flying. And she is already on cloud 9. So get ready for Summer.
Okay, well, we're kind of
all
going
over the
forward, and
place.
I know where I
Yes.
want to start, and we're going to get to Summer. I even pulled a clip and everything. But
wow.
she's an Etobicoke gal, right?
She is.
So
Not
this is
far
like-
from here.
No. So, I didn't need her to be an Etobicoke gal. I loved rooting for Penny. I root for the greats.
Yeah.
Oh, I just said the word Penny, and I remembered a recurring bit on this very podcast where we talked about, do you know Jane Siberry?
I don't know that name.
You don't know? Okay, Jane Siberry, you know why you're young. Am I allowed to ask your age or?
December 27th, 1986.
86. You're an 86 guy. Okay, so there was a big hit before you were born.
Yeah.
Jane Siberry, it was 1984.
Should I be embarrassed that
No.
I don't know this?
No, because you're born in 86. Like, to me, this would be like some Canadian hit from 1972. I'd be like, I'm sorry I missed that, but
Right.
I wasn't around. Okay.
Right. Okay.
So in 1984,
Yeah.
before you were born, Devin, Mimi on the Beach was sung. Mimi on the Beach, Mimi on the... So it was kind of a big CFNY hit, kind of a big song for Jane Siberry. The gentleman who directed the video for that song, Penny Oleksiak's father.
What?
Yeah. In fact, now I react to that while I see if I have the clip.
No, I know a lot of Penny trivia. This is a shocking reveal.
Mm-hmm.
This is really why I'm here today.
Well, I'm now... See, I have it. You ready? I have it.
I'm ready.
Because I have a soundboard.
Well, I am impressed with your producer, switcher, anchor, host, all of the CNN correspondent.
Remind me to get back to the CNN thing, okay? And then we got to talk about my shirt, and we got to talk about how significant this day is for our nation's history.
Massive.
And then we'll get you to Saskatchewan, and
Yeah.
we'll get up to date, and it's going to be like a wonderful 90 minutes or whatever.
Good.
But this is kind of a famous moment in Toronto Mic'd history when I had Jane Siberry on the program. So she joined me remotely. And I don't actually do that for many people, but I'm like, I want Jane Siberry. We're going to do this remotely. I wouldn't do it for you, for example.
You wouldn't.
No,
Yeah,
I'm like,
no,
I'll
I
wait
know.
this. I'll wait 10 years.
You did.
And I waited you out and I got you. I
Yeah.
got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jane's on, and I'm about to drop this mind blow on her about Penny Oleksiak's dad. And I expected her to be mind blown as well. Here's what happened. Do you, Jane, remember who directed the video for Mimi on the Beach?
Yes, it was Dick. I think Dick is some name that I can't remember. I'm sorry, but
Okay.
probably.
Well, let me jog your memory just because I was watching it recently, and I saw the last name Oleksiak.
Yeah, it sounds.
So Oleksiak, and then I did a little Googling because I know an Oleksiak. I know a couple of Oleksiaks, and one happens to be the most decorated Canadian Olympian of all time. And then another, an NHL player. But it turns out the director of that video is the father of Penny Oleksiak, the Olympic swimmer.
Well, she wasn't born when we needed a Mimi
No,
for the
no.
for the surfboard. That's too bad. But
No, but that's kind of a wild little coincidence, right? It's kind of wild that the person who directed your biggest, well, it's debatable, but your first big single eventually would father the most decorated Olympian in the history of this country.
okay, I don't find it that interesting.
No, okay.
It's
I was devastated.
moderately interesting, but not a huge thing, I wouldn't say.
So there you go. I was so blown aback by how disinterested she was in what I thought was a very fun fact.
My jaw is on the floor. You handled that beautifully.
What am I gonna say?
Because you had this gem and this moment and the build up, and then there was
build that up, right?
There was silence.
Silence. It was silence. Silence, and I'm waiting for a reaction. And then she had to come clean, which is she doesn't find it that interesting.
How were you feeling inside? Is like what was happening?
Well, I was kind of like, I think later in this episode, I stopped down and walked through it with her to try to understand how that can't be. Even if you don't enjoy sports, even if you don't watch the Olympics, it's a fun fact because at the time, when we recorded this, the most decorated Canadian Olympian of all time was Penny Oleksiak. So the fact that the director of her biggest video, her most popular song, would go on to father Canada's most decorated Olympian, it blew my mind.
I find it fascinating.
It's at least a fun fact.
It's a fun fact.
Well, Jane did not agree.
She was not impressed.
Not impressed at all.
How long was that interview, by the way?
Oh, the interview, these things go 90 minutes, but that little clip there was like a minute 50.
No, but did it go 90 minutes?
Yeah, it went. You know what? She's an artist. Like, she's a true artist, and I found my conversation with Jane Sibrey to be fascinating. Yeah. But she's just...
I wonder if she would feel the same or if it would be...
I don't even know if she'd remember it, to be quite honest. But if I do bump into Jane, I'm going to ask her if she remembers this moment here. So ask me about my shirt, Devin.
Tell me about your shirt, because as I was walking up to the house, I didn't know if it was if there was construction workers.
You needed to wear your shades for this. Okay, before I tell you about my shirt, though, I'm going to crack open a Great Lakes beer.
All right.
I'm drinking the summer session IPA. It is called Sunnyside. It is my favorite through the summer months.
Wow.
Okay, so I cheers to you.
Cheers.
Okay, so this shirt was gifted to me by a listener who was working for TV Ontario in 1976, and there was some kind of an agreement, some kind of a deal made between TV Ontario and CBC to cover the Montreal Olympics in 1976, and these shirts were handed out to people that were part of the staff, I guess, in Montreal. And this is a genuine 1976 CBC shirt from the Olympics. I believe it's highly flammable, and I wore it for you.
First of all, did you iron it? No, you
I'm
couldn't
afraid
because it might light up in
It'll
flames.
burst into flames.
Right. It looks perfect. Where do you keep it?
Because I only wear it when you CBC heads come over. Like, I'll break it out. I don't know. Diana Swain, I wore it for her.
Did you?
Jill Deacon, I wore it for her. Dwight Drummond, I wore it for.
You got
Tom
the
Harrington.
All-stars. Tom's retiring.
I know.
I think Tom is almost done.
He might be done, actually. I think he might have been done at the end of March. But he was great. He talked about being on the Tommy Hunter show.
Wow.
Where he was a singer, and he did a little singing. And
he did a lot.
He's a legend. He's a legend. But you're on your way to being a legend. So we're talking about the shirt, and I wore it for you.
Thank you. I wore my CBC socks.
Well, let's do this real quick. And I don't know how much you can say, but that's your problem, not mine. Like, I can say anything I want. That's why CNN
you know what?
calls me.
As I thought about all the questions you might ask, I predicted this one, but fire away, because I think I'm prepared for this.
I can basically keep you out of trouble by saying,
thank you.
This is there's only, even though we're not a two-party system, for this particular election, and it's election day if you're listening in the future, it's April 28.
Yeah.
It's 4:11 p.m. We don't know who won this election yet, but there are only two options. Essentially, it's going to come down to the Liberal Party of Canada or the Conservative Party of Canada, one of which has promised to defund the CBC. I have multiple questions, but one is, how does that make you feel as an employee of the CBC?
Well, I'll start by saying, and I told you this before we came on, that this morning when I chose to put on my CBC socks on election day, I looked at my partner and I said, am I going too far? Is this too much of a political statement on election day? I did anticipate this question.
Oh, yeah. He's wearing them, people.
I've taken a lot of heat, Mike, on social media about not being more proudly pro CBC. The internal dialogue I had and where I landed is that as long as I continue to tell truly Canadiana stories, that should be enough to speak for where I stand on all of this. That's sort of how I felt. I don't think there is another place in the country that tells stories of Canadian athletes like CBC. And I don't think there's ever been. We are the home of the Olympics. We are the place where on any given day, you're going to go to cbcsports.ca and you're going to read about a bobsledder that you never knew about.
Right.
And you're not going to see that anywhere else. And, you know, I just hosted an election special. I came from downtown CBC, where everybody's getting ready. The rehearsals are underway. The security is everywhere. And there isn't much in this country that brings us together like a great Olympic moment, a where were you when moment. And we do that. The CBC does that. And it's easy to be critical of the CBC. I've been critical of the CBC at times. But on matters of national significance, of where were you when moments, I think we're our best.
I can hear Don Whitman right now. Donovan Bailey is pouring it on.
You gotta love Saturday nights in Georgia, right? Or Bob Cole, or
oh baby, everything is happening,
right? You know, and so that's where I land. Listen, my family's in Saskatchewan. We have complicated conversations. When I go home, sometimes the radios aren't on CBC radio.
Really? Okay.
So
Saskatchewan, by the way, because I am the official political correspondent from Canada for CNN, I can tell you it's a very conservative province.
Yes, it is. So listen, everything is in the gray area. It's always been in my life. I love dualities. I love sifting through complicated things, and I think this is one of them. But I am 10 toes down with my CBC socks on about the significance and the importance of CBC. And we'll find out how Canadians decide on that. But I think the CBC has been and always should be an important part of the fabric of our country.
Well said, Devin. Now, I want to ask you about the separation of church and state, but no, of sports and news, okay?
Sure.
So you are in the sports department, but let's say you were Tom. I know he's retired now, but I'll pick on him anyway.
Yeah.
But you're in the news department. Would you be more careful with what is all but an endorsement for the Liberal Party of Canada?
I don't think I would. And here's why. I was with news. I was in CBC News for 10 years. I started my career in news because I thought if I went straight to sports, nobody would take me seriously. I had imposter syndrome. It was like being a weather person in a newsroom. You were fluff. You lack substance. You're a sports guy. Right. And so I went to news. Although I've always loved sport, and I actually believe, contrary to what a lot of people think, that sport journalism done well is some of the most compelling journalism. And so, you know, I worked my way through news, but I've always believed that I think why we see such a lack of trust in mainstream media today is that we don't particularly speak to the audience in a nuanced, thoughtful way. And I've always believed that if we could be honest and upfront about some of our biases, and I have many because I'm a living human being, everything I do in my life has shaped the way I approach a story. And I've always believed that if I can come into that with all of me and be honest and upfront about that, I actually believe we get further in moving the conversation forward. And I think we've failed to take a more nuanced analytical approach where we're not blatantly saying this is where my political stripes are and this is how I feel and now I'm going to tell you what I think it is. But I think, Mike, I will talk to both sides of a story and I will sift through what might be fact and what might be fiction. And I'm here to tell you what I think it means for you. And I don't think we do that. I don't think we do it enough. So I don't think I would give you a different answer today, because I think anybody that knows I'm an employee of the CBC and I'm answering this question is probably going to know where I stand.
But okay, I love what you're saying, except if you were in news, let's say Rosie Barden, okay? Let's say Neil Herland, because Harrington's retired, Herland not retired. Great FOTM.
Herland and I worked in Calgary together.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, have you talked to him since you booked this or no? You haven't talked to him?
No, I haven't.
Okay, he's actually supposed to come back this June. So Neil, if you're listening, you're supposed to come back this June. He promised to come back in June to kick out the Pride jams for Pride Month. Okay. Like this is a Neil Herland pledge to kick. Apparently, he loves the clubs and the jams.
Yes,
everything like that.
That doesn't surprise me.
But if you're a news reader or a news host at CBC, you can't have this presumed bias because it will taint the reporting. Like, isn't that everything? This is why, Steve Paikin plays it up the middle and you have no idea, how he's politically.
Do you not?
Well, his wife, I know. I know his.
No, but this.
I don't know Paikin. Paikin's been very careful not to. He's been very careful throughout his career to remain optically unbiased, in my opinion.
Optically,
right.
But I think anybody who knows these people know their thoughts, and so you're actually hammering home my point. Okay. I think the audience, when they watch things, inherently have already made up their mind based on everything they've read or whatever echo chamber they're on social media or whatever. They've already drawn their own conclusions. So they're going to gravitate to the media outlet or independent journalism that best aligns with them. And if they do stumble upon a Rosemary Barton, they're already going to look at everything she says through whatever lens they've applied to her. So
are you suggesting that the Pierre Poilievre supporters already deem Rosie and the CBC crew to be biased for the Liberal Party of Canada?
I think if
I'm trying to get you in trouble here, Devin. How am I doing?
I know you are. I'm not.
It gets easier. Don't worry.
I'm not afraid of these conversations. Okay. I think if you go on social media, and I'm scouring social media all the time, not because I'm doom scrolling, because I actually like to see where people are at. And I think to answer your question, if you go and you look at the comments, I think there's a resounding answer that yes, people fundamentally believe that the CBC is a mouthpiece of the government, and that Rosemary, with everything that has developed in her career, would be aligned in that way. And I'm not here to put judgment or analyze any of that. I just think people already. The landscape has changed, Mike, to a point where you don't sit down with your dinner set at 6 p.m. and what happens on your TV is the only way you're getting the news. Everybody is their own producer, consumer. They cultivate their own experience.
But being in the sports department does give you a little leeway in this regard, I think. I've had many a sports journalist who has called it the toy department. And yeah, there are important stories. There's inspiring stories. I love sports.
I think the toy department people are the beat writers of old. They're the old guard.
Shout out to Steve Simmons.
They're the old guard. Should I leave it there?
Okay,
they're the old
list.
guard. I can be spicy. They're the people who looked at me as a gay man and walked into NHL locker rooms and went, who the hell is this guy? And why is he asking a question that might make somebody feel something? Because we don't do that here.
Well, that is spicy. So did you feel
yes.
Some homophobia?
Oh, absolutely.
My goodness.
Yes.
So can you elaborate? give me some names. No, you don't give me names. But and how many of them are FOTMs? Because I'll talk to them.
Right.
I'll talk to them.
No,
like, I got like zero tolerance on this. You have no idea.
I've always found it interesting when I go into some of these bigger pro events, and if I never cover another pro event or pro sport in my career, I'll be very happy with that. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all make believe, and nobody is really speaking honestly. Let's just be real about that.
Right. I agree.
It's laced with cliche, and I don't really know what I get from a pre-game or post-game NHL interview. I could do it right now for you. There's no value added.
Okay, you be Austin Matthews.
Right.
Okay, game 5 tomorrow night. You're at home. How important is it to wrap this up at home before going back to Ottawa game 6?
I like what we've done so far. If we get pucks in deep and we play the way we're supposed to play, if we stick to the game plan, I think we're going to be where we need to be.
Well, you got to give 110%, right?
110%. We love playing at home. We feel comfortable. I know my way into the building. And then what happens, and why I think people have sort of found their way to my journalism, and why I think it's different, is because I'll never know what it's like to shoot or score or pass like Austin Matthews. Mm-hmm. But there's probably something in his life, Mike, that makes him relatable to me about learning what it's like to win or lose or have something I care about or mean something to me. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to tap into that when I cover sports.
Well, you're humanizing these athletes and you're tapping into their humanity. All right, we're doing the same thing. We're doing the same thing. I do it for CNN. You do it for CBC.
I see you. I see you. You are getting me in trouble here.
No, man. I love the out of the gate here. Also, I want to read a note from the live stream because we're live at live.torontomike.com. And I see Tyler has already pointed out the obvious, which is that you provided the reaction that I was hoping to get from Jane to the fun fact about Mimi on the beach and Penny Oleksiak's dad. So if you have any inroads with Penny, I want Penny's dad on Toronto Mike just to talk about directing Mimi on the beach.
Yeah.
So if you have any contact there, that could be like an assignment for you.
I still can't get over that. We've double sourced that it is in fact
Wait
him.
till I tell you. Well, yes. I mean, I did. It was his name.
Yeah.
And I found out through, I think, IMDb that he has done such work in the past.
I'm going to ask Penny about it.
I want you to.
Yeah.
And I need you to be on
I'm going to
Team
make this,
Toronto Mike here.
I'm going to be Team Toronto Mike.
And now you don't know
James. You try to
James.
get me in trouble on election day.
Well, no, I haven't even tried to get you in trouble. Now I'm going to try because I need a prediction. So again, like literally.
No predictions. There are no predictions.
But you have a preference. Well, this is so obvious. Like you obviously are hoping for a liberal majority tonight.
I think I am on the side of CBC.
Okay. And that's why I'm wearing this shirt today, because I'm a big CBC fan. But CBC aside, I'm not a fan of... I'm allowed to be opinionated. I don't work for the CBC. Okay, I work for CNN, so I can tell you that... I think that's like saying that. Again, imposter. We both have imposter
Let me
syndrome.
ask you something, because I feel comfortable asking questions as well. I always get a little uneasy when I'm on the other end of questions.
Right.
It seeps into my personal life as well. And then I'm reminded by friends and family, you're not interviewing me. Do you do that as well?
Do I interview family members and stuff?
Yeah, where a normal conversation becomes somewhat of an interrogation.
Because I've done this thousands of times, usually 90 minutes or so at a time, and I'm very good at knowing what I want to get and how to build the blocks.
I know you are.
So I know, for example, I
it.
can't ask you about homophobia in the NHL dressing room in the first 2 minutes. We need to develop a bit of rapport.
7 minutes.
I need 7 minutes before we go there. Okay,
let me ask you. So when you are representing the country on CNN, do you feel like you have to be a more charged up version of yourself?
No. In fact, if you go to torontomike.com, I posted the YouTube clip because I get the video.
Yeah.
You can watch me, and I didn't get much time. I think I got 3 minutes and change or something.
That's a lot of real estate
I don't know.
on CNN.
I don't know. I had 4.5 minutes last month, so I feel like they're stripping my time. Next time I'm on, it'll be 60 seconds, and then they'll just have me wave, and then audio will
What
say
did you
hello.
say? Cole's notes.
Okay, so that's...
What's your prediction for tonight? What do you hope happens?
I hope, and my prediction is that there will be a a majority government for Mark Carney in the Liberal Party of Canada.
And you believe a majority?
Yeah. I believe it on a couple of fronts. I guess it's not just wishful thinking. I believe that what's going to make that happen is the almost complete collapse of the NDP. So
True.
Traditionally, we had a very strong, third party, if you will, and would, if you were left of Conservative Party, you had some going Green, you had NDP, you had Liberal Party. It's so completely collapsed this particular election where it's almost as if all Canadians decided to vote on one single issue.
Yeah.
Who is best to stand up to the American president regarding these threats to make us the 51st state and these tariffs? Who do you want?
Yeah.
Do you want Poilievre there or do you want Mark Carney there? And I think a whole whack of traditional NDP voters are like, this is too important. I'm voting for Mark Carney this time.
Yep. I agree with everything you just said.
And then I look province by province. So my wife is from Alberta. And you're from Saskatchewan, so those two provinces are very blue.
Very.
But and my daughter's in Montreal, and we have a lot of chats about what's going on there. But if you go east of Montreal, east of Quebec, very liberal, very liberal,
very
not a lot of seats,
very pro CBC.
Yes,
you go to Newfoundland and Labrador. If you work for the CBC, you are a literal rock star.
On the rock.
On the rock.
I see what you know what? This is why you got
We're
that
aligned.
gig, man.
We're aligned.
If you're ever sick or something and you need somebody to chat up summer at the side of the pool, just let me know, okay? So now Quebec, yes, there's still some block votes going on there, but it's going to be pretty heavy liberal because when you think about it, right? Because we say, I'm old enough to remember when Quebec wanted to separate from Canada. It was freaking close, that referendum. I'm old enough to remember that vividly.
Yeah.
But what would be worse for Quebec? The deal they have now with Canada, where they have the language rights and all this, or be in the 51st state where it's like, sorry, bro, this is an English province now. I'm telling you, things are better in Canada than in America, and they know it. And I think Quebec will come out and vote Liberal.
Do you think the post by Trump this morning, doubling down on the 51st state, do you think did that help the Liberal cause?
Big time. Huge. I think I put on Blue Sky that, or somewhere I put that Carney should send Trump flowers.
Yeah.
Like, really, honestly, it helps immensely because he's basically saying, vote for Poilievre and become the 51st state. Free defense, all this gobbledygook nonsense. That's very, very unpopular here. So let's get to Ontario, okay?
Okay.
First, where do you live? Toronto?
Toronto.
Okay.
Well, when I'm here.
Where do you
Which is
vote?
rare.
Toronto?
Toronto.
Right. So Toronto, I think there's only one riding I'm unsure about because the Junction has this one. She was the MPP. Her name is Boutia Karpoche. Very good MPP. I met her at the Terry Fox run at High Park. I bumped into her a bunch of times. She's not in my riding, but I quite like her. She decided to move into federal politics. So she's running for the NDP, and then Nardisi, I believe is his name, is running for the Liberal Party. That one I can't call. I don't know. Maybe NDP actually wins a seat. But other than that riding, I think this entire city is slam dunk Liberal. So that's Toronto.
You don't think it's going to be as close as
not in Toronto.
What the polls were suggesting over the weekend?
The Toronto polls don't even give me a sense it's going to be that close. Now, when you leave Toronto in the 905, now you start picking up blue, right?
Sure.
And then a lot of Ontario outside of Toronto goes blue, but a lot goes red as well. So then, we got some problem.
I cannot believe
few provinces. Then you're in BC. BC will have their fair share of red going on there.
Yep.
And I believe, 172? You need 172 seats to form a majority government. I think they get 200.
Wow.
And again, I was on Humble and Fred this morning, and I said, I want the Dewey defeats Truman moment, right? Dewey defeats Truman was printed, and of course, Truman won that election. I don't care if I'm wrong. This is a prediction. I don't have any crystal ball on this. This is the vibe I have as I speak to you right now at 4:31 p.m. on April 28th.
We would have had no idea there was going to be an election on this day when we made repeated attempts to have a conversation.
Oh, yeah, I know it. How it worked out. My goodness. Yeah.
Now you've got me saying things that now I'm playing back going,
no,
how did that come across?
Don't play back. You wearing CBC socks because you work for the you should love where you work, and you should deem the CBC to be an important institution in this country.
I think it is. I don't regret
how is that controversial? Well, you said it, Devin. I didn't say it. Okay, so we'll get you out of trouble. Bob Willett, who's on Indy 88, saving terrestrial radio. Okay, he's doing his best. We love Bingo Bob on this show. Bob Willett says, I love Devin. He has no idea who I am, but he answered a random tweet of mine to him. So
Bob
says he loved the fact you replied to his tweet.
Oh, that's fantastic. Hi, Bob.
Are you still tweeting on that note?
I am.
So I'm going to quote Mike Wilner, okay? I'm going to bust your chops for a minute here because I'm guilty of this. I loved Twitter. When Elon bought it, I loved it a great deal less. And when Trump was reelected for a second term in November, I basically it became a cesspool. I just couldn't stand Twitter, but I still kind of pasted my Blue Sky stuff there.
Yeah.
Until I sat down here with Mike Wilner. Do you know Mike Wilner? Covers Blue Jays.
I know of him, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he goes, Mike, let's quote Mike Wilner here, okay? His girlfriend just made me a pie. And I got to send, it's not a tweet because it's on Blue Sky, but I think it's the dirtiest Blue Sky thing I ever sent, which is basically, Mike Wilner, your girlfriend's pie was delicious. I just, is that dirty? It's true. His girlfriend's pie is delicious. Okay, you're smart to stay quiet on this one. Okay, so Mike Wilner said, hey, Mike, let's pretend there was a bar that you love to go to and drink your Great Lakes beer. I'm like, yeah, I like this bar. Let's say a Nazi bought the bar. Do you still go to that bar? And I said, no, fuck no, I'll find another bar. And he goes, then why are you posting on Twitter? I posted one more to say I'm out, and I never posted again.
Yeah, I mean, that was a gut punch.
I'm trying to recruit you to...
I'm now going to look, and now I'm going to look and see this might be my last tweet ever.
Just say, Toronto Mike talked me out of Twitter. I'm just saying it's...
I've got a big following there. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Threads. I copy paste. I do the things. I was
doing that too.
Quite frankly, I actually... My relationship with all of these platforms is very complicated these days because I'm trying to understand what the currency is. So what is the currency now with the audience? Because, I did start at CBC when we first decided that audience feedback, Facebook posts, comments, comment on this, that was a big part of our programming back when it was hot, right?
Yeah.
And then it just got really ugly.
But it's really ugly. In fact, one of my pet peeves of CBC is that they don't Blue Sky. I'm doing everything on Blue Sky, loving it, but there's no official CBC account there. TVO's there.
I'm not going to speak for anyone, but I think it was literally because it got so toxic that the CBC went, why would we even go into any of this space? Because I'll push back. Do you really find Blue Sky to be a nicer version? Everybody.
I personally, I can only speak for, yours
You
truly.
really do.
Night and day.
Really?
If I post the same thing on X as I do on Blue, and I won't do this test now, but in the past, there are going to be some just trolls looking to enrage me and I won't get that on Blue Sky. Okay. So that's my experience.
Well, they're coming.
Okay, well, they're coming.
I hate to burst your bubble. It's everywhere.
Get CBC on Blue Sky. That's my request. Okay, so you are. I'm going to give you a gift right now, and then we're going to get into this. I want to talk a little bit about Saskatchewan. So I'm giving you this gift, and you're going to say, Mike, what are you talking about Saskatchewan for? Well,
okay.
Moneris sent over this wireless speaker for you, Devin.
This is fantastic.
But it's not free of charge. You have to subscribe and listen to Yes, We Are Open, which is an award-winning podcast from Moneris, hosted by Al Grego. In this latest season 8, Al went to Regina. He went to Regina. I know he's a Toronto guy. He's not. He works in Toronto. He's up in Holland's Landing or something like that.
Impeccable timing that he went to Regina when I'm here.
But he's back now. He's back now. He recorded. He came back. He's dropping these episodes now. I have a lovely note about the new episode. Okay, yes. Al visited Tracy, I'm going to butcher this last name, Tracy Bosch, the owner of Zippity Zoom Toys in Regina. Mm-hmm. Tracy shares the inspiring story of how she started the toy store in 2009, juggling a newborn and a new business, and she talks about the evolution of the store, her background in retail, and her passion for toys. So you can hear that episode of Yes, We Are Open. Enjoy that wireless speaker, Devin.
Awesome.
Can you say a few words about Regina? So you're a Saskatooner, right?
Oh, this is a lot of booby traps here when you got a Saskatoon
don't like Regina,
person
do you?
talking about Regina.
Tell me about Regina.
You're going to have me
I've never
drinking
been.
this craft beer by the end of this.
Well, it's there for you. You're taking that craft beer home with you. Thank you, Great Lakes Brewery.
Thank you. I have no issues with Regina. And that, I think, alone is a hot take, because when you're from Saskatoon, you're supposed to hate Regina. But I did a degree at the University of Saskatchewan.
Okay.
I did a degree at the University of Regina. My beloved Rough Riders, that is something I am unobjective about. They are the best CFL team in the country. And I have covered the CFL, and people have gotten mad at me about my bias towards the beloved Rough Riders. But my time in Regina cheering on the Rough Riders, in fact, I'm doing my bachelor party at a Rough Rider game in June.
What day in June am I going to be at this bachelor party?
June 5th. Home opener against the Ottawa Red Blacks, because that was the only place I wanted to go for my bachelor party.
That's it. That's where
Regina.
you want to go to
Regina.
Regina.
To Regina. To Saskatchewan. I love Regina. I love Saskatchewan. I love being from Saskatchewan.
And you couldn't do this gig from there. Like you can't because you need to be near.
You gotta be a warm body in Toronto HQ. And my family didn't understand that. Mm-hmm. But I made the leap. Didn't have a job here. I was a staff reporter at CBC Saskatchewan.
Okay.
Willy Wonka's golden ticket, Mike. Like people ride this thing for 30, 40 years, and I could have done that. But I knew I wanted to be here, and I knew I wanted to go to the Olympics. So I left that staff position in Saskatoon, CBC Saskatchewan, came here, and made a pitch.
Wait, so you didn't have the gig before you came here?
No.
You came here without the gig, but you had a gig in Saskatoon. Where is that, Regina?
Saskatoon, but I was a provincial correspondent.
Oh, real news.
Yeah.
And then you said, I want to go there because you wanted to cover the Olympics?
I wanted to go to Pyeongchang, and it was a year and a half from Pyeongchang, and I said, I walked into the boardroom, which has now become a digital studio, and I said, send me to curling. Send me to the Scotties and the Briar. And I'll be candid with you. Mm-hmm. I don't think those men in that room that day particularly thought I could succeed, or maybe didn't want me to. Somewhere in the middle. I don't know.
Is that because you're a proud gay man?
There might have been some of that.
I find this interesting that in this, and this is not 2025, this is earlier.
It
obviously.
was 2017, but
still.
But also, I'm one of few openly gay national sports correspondents in this 2025.
Without a doubt.
Tell me another one.
I don't know if you'd call this person a national sports correspondent, but Scott MacArthur was covering, was doing sports media for years.
Right.
And he came out while on the job. So he came over to talk about that. It's fascinating. I'm a big Scotty Mac fan, actually.
So am I. I was on a panel with him. I adore him. I think he's got a kind heart and has meant a lot and literally saves lives. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic in that, because I wondered what my life was going to be like in this space growing up in Saskatchewan. And my friends always said, some of my first interviews, Mike, were with like Brian Tauris, the head coach of the University of Saskatchewan Huskies football program, who had more wins than anybody and was this daunting, rough, tough man. And I had to find my voice, and I had to figure out who I was, and I was chameleon-like in all of these different spaces. But there are hints of that, and it's not overt, but it's there, and it's always there. And before I knew who I was, and before I knew I was okay with who I was, that was a really hard space to be in.
I'm hearing you talk, and I'm wondering, is there another openly gay man covering sports in this country?
I don't think so.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So it has been hard. There is a personal toll to all of that, because when there are issues of LGBTQ plus issues in sport, I'm the person they turn to. I will say my colleague, Anastasia Busis, is openly lesbian. Diana Matheson is her spouse. And Anastasia and I have talked a lot about the fact that there are two queer people that are key figures in CBC Olympic coverage. And we are incredibly proud of that. And I would say that my being gay has influenced my journalism in ways I could have never imagined. And it is a blessing and a gift because I've had to sort through all of my stuff to be able to get to this point where I am now, to stand across from an athlete and see all the parts of them in me and the hopes and the dreams and the fears and go, I think I might know what you might be feeling in this moment when you didn't live up to what you wanted to do in this moment.
Very interesting. You're an interesting guy. No, seriously. A lot of times I do this a lot. Like a lot of times guests are here and you get the answers and then it's almost like they're recalling this from their brain, but I feel like you're actually like answering questions like from the heart. And
this is from the heart, and it actually.
But why do you have your notepad out with all the? Just kidding.
Right. No, I gotta admit, it makes me a little uncomfortable, but I'm learning to lean into that more and more and more. My mom always said, "Boy, you picked a really interesting career to be somebody who hasn't always been okay with who they are," because I've had to grow up in front of a camera and a microphone.
And do you think, now again, I'm going to be one of those Toronto assholes who makes assumptions here, but I would think it's easier to grow up a gay boy in Toronto than it is in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, I think it's why so many of us leave. I mean, my plight is a very similar plight for a lot of gay men who grow up in Saskatchewan, because the gay bar I went to in Saskatoon called Divas, the only way you could get there is through a back alley that was sort of obscure and hidden, right? Like out of sight, out of mind. And so, yeah, it is. I mean, I've had experiences where homophobic slurs have been hurled my way on the streets of Saskatoon.
Wow.
I'm not saying that can't happen in any other place in the country, but there is much more of a community. Mike, I can tell you the first time walking down Davie Street in Vancouver and Church Street in Toronto, when at a time when maybe some people question these areas in cities, villages, gay villages. When I was 18, 19 years old, that was a safe space for me. It was, in a way that I never saw in Saskatoon. So, yeah. And I'll tell you, just to close the loop on all of this, is speaking from the heart.
Yeah.
I've always said that, and I came out publicly. I don't know if you know that, but I was a sports editor at the University of Saskatchewan newspaper.
Okay.
And I wrote a coming out article as the editor. That was my...
So you're young. You're going to university.
I was 18 years old. Had just turned 18.
And you came out in an article or a column or whatever you wrote in Publish.
The Sheaf newspaper, longest.
So why did you decide to do that?
Because, and it's the same reason why I speak about it on right now to you, is because if there was one person out there that read that went, oh my God, there's somebody like me out there, and I'm not in this alone, then it was worth it. And I received a lot of hate mail, because that was at a time when people were still writing letters. That was 2007. And, but I also got a lot of notes. I got a note from a guy whose dad was an RCMP, and he didn't want to tell his dad about his being gay, and he told his dad, and they started to build a relationship in the wake of that article. And I still have people to this day who come up to me and thank me for that article all these years later.
You only need to hear one story like that to validate everything, and that be so glad you did that. Yeah. Right? Just one story like that. Because people will see a reflection of themselves in you.
I hope they do. And I hope that it can be an entry point to have a conversation, because my family in Saskatoon, I'm making them sound out to be a bunch of hicks. They're not. Oh,
that's a university town, okay? My first wife was from Saskatoon.
Yes.
There's not hicks in Saskatoon.
It is a bumpin' city.
Shout out to John Diefenbaker.
Exactly. And I give my family a lot of credit, and I would say that we have all been on a journey together, and I am so proud of how open-minded they've become and how much they've challenged some of their limiting thoughts through my experiences.
Love to hear that.
Yeah.
Love to hear that. Oh gosh, man. So I'm now reminded quickly of a story, and then we're going to get back to your career arc here. But her name is Ariana. Transgender woman. She's an FOTM. You're, by the way, an FOTM. That means friend of Toronto Mike. You're now in this esteemed club, Devin. You're an FOTM.
Finally.
It took us, but I think it took us years to put this together. I don't know. I feel like I've been working on Devin forever. I'm like, I'd watch the Olympics and I want that guy. And then I'd write a note and it's like, oh, I'm going to be in Japan. Then I'm going to be in China. I don't know. You're all over the map here. And it's like, I don't know how to get this guy.
It's been a long time coming.
But here you go. But Ariana, I remember her story in that she heard or she read about Scott MacArthur. And she reached out to Scott about, because Ariana was covering the Blue Jays for a digital platform. Can't remember the name of it right now. But she talked to Scott, who gave her the courage to come out because she was afraid she would not be accepted by the baseball fans as a transgender woman. And really, so you being yourself is creating, I don't want to say a blueprint, but it's a path for, there's a young gay man who wants to go into either as an athlete or as a journalist, wants to be in the world of sports. And because you did it, they will now feel that they can do it too.
Thank you, Mike. I believe that. I really do. And to the young, I think about the kids, and to the young people, I've always said there is a massive place in sport for you. There absolutely is. And I just think about how many times I went into scrums when I wasn't okay with who I was, and I wanted to shrink. I wanted to be small. I wanted to be invisible. And that was such a hard time. I dressed differently. I acted differently. And I thought about how it affected my performance as a journalist in my ability to do the job. And then I think about athletes and I go, wait a second, if athletes can't be authentic in the field of play, there has to be a performance metric in not being able to show up at the field of play and being their authentic selves. And I think that if I can actually be somebody that they speak to in a post-competition conversation, it might affect their performance. And weirdly enough, because I'm not objective when it comes to our Canadian athletes, I'm such a proud supporter of them.
Right.
I am with them in Paris and Pyeongchang and Tokyo. I am with them. And when they come to speak to me, I want them to feel seen and supported and feel like in that moment they can be all of who they are. And I actually believe in Paris something changed. And I think athletes felt like they could do that. And I think they were all watching each other. And I think what we're doing collectively is making this ecosystem where people can show up. And I think Canadian athletes might just perform better because of it. I'm convinced of that.
Okay. Love Mike. I know I produce a podcast for Donovan Bailey. That's why I shouted out Don Whitman earlier, because every episode we have the anchor leg where I play that call.
Yeah.
So it's like tattooed in my brain, but love the Canadian athletes. Just as I said off the top, love the Olympics. Partly of that Paris, if I may, is that even as a spectator, there was something about having to go through the pandemic and then come out the other side where I feel like so much was suppressed. So much of what we love about the Olympics was suppressed during the pandemic. And then in Paris, we were post-pandemic.
And what a party.
Yeah.
It was a party.
And it's Paris, for God's sakes, right? And I still don't know how Celine Dion hit those notes, because I had just seen a documentary on her where she was having seizures.
Yeah.
She's got that terrible disease, stiff body disease, or stiff person's disease, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And she's hitting these notes live in Paris.
I'll never forget it. I was at the base of the Eiffel Tower with the rain coming down that night. The only day it rained. I know organizers would have loved the rendering shot, which was this golden glow of the sunset over the Seine as it boats and the parade. But I gotta say, the rain and the lights and Celine and the moment I'll never forget. Never.
It's like when Prince did the halftime show at the Super Bowl,
Right.
and the rains came down for Purple Rain.
Yes.
Okay, this is all
I know.
scripted, you know.
It
Okay.
is universal. It is celestial. It is greater than us, Mike.
So wait, when you come to Toronto without a gig, because you're at CBC Saskatchewan,
Yeah.
covering provincial politics, what are you covering?
I was our beat man. I covered the biggest story, the top story of the day, just like I did at CBC Calgary, live at 5:30, 6, and 11 o'clock for 3 years, every single day on breaking news.
And that was after, because I guess I want to get you to Toronto, but I don't want to miss anything interesting. So
2012 to 2015,
Okay.
Calgary.
Calgary. And that's where you meet Neil Herland?
Yes. We were doing nights. He was doing radio.
I'm Neil Herland. I do an impression of his CBC updates. I'm Neil Herland.
Neil and I had wonderful times in the newsroom at night. Some massive stories. Listen, when I was in Calgary, I covered the floods. I was in High River every single day for a month. There were some horrific stories. I'll never forget a story. Nathan O'Brien, a 5-year-old who was with his grandparents, they were killed in the middle of the night. I covered this manhunt and search for them for about a month. Stories of scandal, political scandal. Adrian Arsenault and I broke a massive story about a bunch of Muslim men radicalizing in a mosque at 8th and 8th downtown Calgary. I did it all. I did hard-hitting news.
Yeah. That's not the toy department.
No, it wasn't. And then I went to CBC Saskatchewan, and then I went, wait, I got to get back to Toronto. I got to get back to sports. And so I came here, made the pitch, cobbled together a couple of casual shifts a week with CBC Sports, and then a couple of casual shifts with CBC Toronto and the National on the weekend. And then finally, about a year out from Pyeongchang, and I went
And
to
what year? Remind me, what year was Pyeongchang?
2018, but now it's 2017, Scotties and Briar.
Right.
I go to the Scotties in St. Catherine. I go to the Briar in St. John's. They both pop off. Rachel Holman and Brad Gushu win. Gushu wins his first ever Briar in St. John's. My stories popped off. It was undeniable. And a year later, I was a full-time employee of the CBC Sports department in Pyeongchang, working with Mike Harris and Joe McCusker from the 1998 Nagano teams that I grew up and fell in love with. And there I am with them in Pyeongchang.
Is curling your favorite sport?
I don't know if it is. Listen, I watch every single curling game imaginable.
Yeah.
I love it. It is cathartic. It makes me feel like I'm home. Tonight there's another game that I will have on. The sound of a rock sliding, the sound of granite crashing is like home for me.
So I was born here.
Yeah.
That's how pathetic I am. I'm like, I was born at St. Joe's. I could probably bike there in 10, 15 minutes. Who knows?
That's amazing.
But I feel like that's the reason, because as a kid and as a teen growing up, when I loved sports, by the way, zero interest in curling. And I feel like if I had been born in Saskatoon, I would be like you right now.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of it, like
For better, for worse.
Okay, well, I'll
Yeah.
take it. Come on,
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
But you know how you like now you're not far from Mimico here, and now I'm learning about this like great lacrosse culture in Mimico, because I wasn't raised in Mimico. It was another part of Toronto, and I now that I live down here and I see, there's lacrosse is a big deal down here. I never saw lacrosse. What is it called? The net? What is it called? You're the CBC Sports guy. You're going to be in trouble for this. But that paddle or stick or whatever, we'll call it a stick. Okay.
The stick. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, because there's like a net on the end.
The scoopy thing.
I never saw one until I moved here
No.
in my 40s.
Really?
Never saw one. Like in person, I never saw one. Like I never saw a kid at high school carrying their lacrosse stick.
It's an Olympic sport now.
I know, and I'll watch it in the Olympics. And I'm not anti-lacrosse. I guess it's a long-winded way of saying that if you're raised with the sport
Sure.
and you love it as a young person, it gets in your blood and you love it as an adult. I think it might be tough outside of the Olympics where I'll watch luge, okay? I've never tuned into skeleton. I've never tuned into skeleton
Really?
outside of the Olympics.
Do you know the difference between luge and skeleton?
Yeah, like and every 4 years I'm reminded of all the differences. The difference is oh crap. I can't remember. What is it?
So here's how I remember it. Skeleton, you're head first because that's just crazy, and skeleton and
Okay.
could equal death, head first.
Skeletons are dead.
Right. So that's head first on your stomach.
Okay.
Luge, you're on your back, feet first.
Okay. And I do remember the tragedy in the training runs.
Right. That's a horrible segue.
Whistler.
But yes.
Yeah, no, I know. It's a terrible segue.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing about being in the Olympic world is I have covered every single one of these sports, and I have never pretended to be an expert on any one of them. And that's how I approach everything I cover, because all of these niche sports have the most diehard loyal fan base you'll ever come across. And if you walk into that world thinking you're about to tell them something, you're about to get bombed with criticism and hate. So I just go in, I reflect the excitement and the awe and the wonder of a quad axle or whatever it is. And they love me. And I think they love me because I'm being sincere about the fact that I'm not the expert, but this is what I just saw.
No, I mean, the passion is palpable, as I say that from, 2 feet away from you here. So I want to ask you about something that's not Olympics related. Okay. And I pulled a clip just to put us in that time frame here. So let's listen to this.
You got to be aware of the inbounder here if you're Philly.
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger? Game! Series! Toronto has won! Fourth-quarter points by Kawhi Leonard. And the game winner, 41 points.
How about the bounce? And look at the fans in Toronto. They have had a lot of misery the last few years, and how about the validation for Toronto?
I felt great.
Kawhi Leonard, I was going to pull a clip from the Game 6 against Golden State, and I'm like, no, that's the clip I want to pull. Yeah. That's the moment. We didn't get a moment in Game 6 against Golden State.
No, and actually it was weird. Yeah. It was a weird ending. I was there in Oracle Arena, and...
So you covered the Raptors 2019 championship run.
And guess what? I wasn't at that game.
You know what? That's amazing. You're not at the Toronto game 7, second round. How come you weren't there?
I wasn't there. I was in Saskatoon. I actually think that
get out of my basement.
I think that
get out of here.
I know. But I was at every other game after that.
Okay.
Partly because I think, like any Raptors fan, we were all waiting maybe for it not to go the right way. And finally, the ball bounced the right way.
Now, and again, reminding the listenership that we're tied when he takes that shot. We're not losing.
No. Because it would have went to overtime. We would have won. You know what? What I will say, that was the pivotal moment, of course. But I also think the second pivotal moment, and the moment allowed...
Can I guess? Game 3 against the Bucks.
Yes.
100%
You are so on point.
I loved that team, firstly. So you're covering that team. We're going to talk about you being at Game 6 in a moment here. But I went to... So the first game against Orlando, we lose.
Yeah.
And
everybody's going, oh, here we go again.
My son's a big my son's a big Raptor fan. And we were both like, oh, we're Raptoring again, even with Kawhi for this 1 year. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, but we never win Game 1.
But Game 2. Yeah. I was lucky enough to score 2 tickets to the, I guess it was Air Canada Center at the time in 2019, right? Anyways, I got 2 tickets. I can't remember, actually, when they turned into...
Scotia.
I think, is it? Okay, 2019, okay. Yeah. So I get 2 tickets to see that, and we blow them out, and then the rest is history. But you're right. We win that. That's that clip I just played of the 4-bouncer, which I bought a T-shirt with the 4-bouncer on it. I love that moment in Raptor history. That's the moment. Kawhi Leonard 4-bouncer to eliminate Philly in round 2. But you're right. We lose the first 2 games against the Bucks.
To the Bucks.
And if we go down 3-0,
it's
done.
over. None of it happens.
And what do you remember about, were you at Game 3?
I was. Okay. And Kawhi, if people remember correctly, was hobbled. He was hobbled. He had played so many minutes, but he literally took that team on his back in not only late in the fourth quarter, but the first overtime, and then the second overtime.
Yep.
And if he doesn't do what he does, it's over.
Yep.
It's over. And that
over.
was the turning point for the entire thing.
And I remember vividly, so that double overtime win in Game 3, which what a must-win game, and what an effort by Kawhi and to win in 2 overtime. So close.
It crushed the Bucks. They were done after that. They knew it. They knew it.
The very next morning, I had Mark Hebscher here for Hebsy on Sports.
Yeah.
And then as he left, Leo Roudens came by.
Amazing.
The very next morning, he had a coffee in his hand. He was kind of blurry-eyed. It was a very late night, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that Game 3. And then because now we can talk with this wonderful hindsight that we win the NBA championship. Spoiler alert. You're going to tell us about Game 6 in a moment being there. But that Game 3 against the Bucks, that was the most important. I mean, that was everything. You had to win that Game 3, and it was double overtime, and we just pulled it out.
It was as close as the Raptors were for it all crumbling. I always felt like they were going to beat Philly, whether it was the bounce around winner or overtime. I always felt that was a foregone conclusion. I didn't feel that way about the Bucks, and they were hanging on the cliff from it all evaporating. And then they win 4 straight. And then they take on the mighty Warriors.
The mighty hobbled Warriors.
Sure.
And I'm not putting an asterisk.
I never will. I never will.
Not.
No.
That's bullshit.
To go into Oracle in that building, in a place where the Warriors just don't lose, and to beat them in every game there was remarkable.
Yeah.
In fact, when I got on that plane to go there, I fully expected a split. That we'd be coming back to Toronto tied 2-2. And they went into that hostile territory. And I'll tell you what, Mike, the place was so old and so storied. I mean, just history dripping from the rafters and other things dripping from the rafters. They didn't have enough place in the room in the press box. They had me seated in the middle of the fans. It was an experience I will never forget, writing my game story with these fans on top of me, heckling as I type.
I remember, I still remember watching that game with my oldest, who was a diehard Raptor fan, still is. And I remember we didn't get that moment. You know, when you win a championship and you have a moment?
There wasn't. It was weird. What happened again? There was
They called somebody a violation of some sort.
Yeah.
And so there was like one of those things like where it was over, but it wasn't over. And we had to play out
reset the clock. And then they throw the ball in the air.
Right.
And no, it was weird. And so then in the middle of the stands, I have to make my way down to the locker room. Well, thank goodness I had former Raptor Chris Bosh to guide me down as if out of nowhere. Chris Bosh arrives, and him and I fight our way through the crowd, and I slap him in the back of the I said, Bosh, can you believe this? He was so happy. It was such a beautiful moment to share in Oracle, making our way through these fans as he bodied his way through and made room for me to the locker room. Wow. And then the crowd and the anthem and the party in the locker room and champagne and cigars. And
then for us in Toronto, that parade, and we've been deprived of a major parade since 93.
That parade was bonkers.
I went to the Lakeshore side.
Yeah.
Which, in fact, with Hebsy and I went to the Lakeshore side. It was amazing, but then I had reports from people on the other side, not so amazing.
No.
It all depended on which part of the parade you attended.
I knew there were issues with the parade because we went big on CBC. Heather Hiscox and I started our coverage at the start. Right. And when the parade started and it took about 45 minutes to make it a block, I knew we were in trouble because I then made my way to our CBC studios for what was supposed to be a 2-hour special, which went on for 5 hours. So, but incredible. The city was electric. It was one of the greatest moments in my career.
So Snow is in the calendar for next Monday. Informer composer, rapper Snow. Okay, so when Informer came out, it was 1992, and the Blue Jays won their first World Series. And then there was this famous Daddy Yankee kind of a cover, an interloping of, I can't remember what they called it, Spanish words I can't remember right now, for Informer, which had Snow, and that was 2019.
Right.
And then the Raptors won their first championship. Snow is making his Toronto Mike debut in 2025, and you know what that means, right?
Leafs.
The Toronto Maple Leafs, your 2025 Stanley Cup champions. Book it there. That's another prediction I'm making.
Listen, people call me a bandwagoner, but I grew up in Saskatoon. We don't have a hockey team.
Nope.
So we grew up on Saturday nights. We grew up on Wendell Clark and Doug Gilmore.
Wendell's there. Dougie's in the washroom.
Doug's in the washroom, and I saw that, and I made note of that. We lived and died for the Maple Leafs growing up. Every Saturday night, we had a natural fireplace in our house. We would roast hot dogs over the fire, and we'd watch Hockey Night in Canada, and we'd cheer on the Leafs.
No wonder you love Bob Cole. Bob Cole and Harry Neal, Saturday night. That was mine,
that
too.
was it. And that run, was it 93, 94, 94?
Yeah. 92, 93, and 93, 94 were the two conference finals.
And they stole my heart and broke my heart simultaneously.
Bob Rouse, think of that defensive core. It was tremendous. Yeah, the whole team was great. And Dave Andrechuk was on that team.
Dave Andrechuk was on that team, and Potvin, and there was something about the garden and the sight lines, and it was just this.
Gilmore was just playing over his head. He needed. Here's what he needed. So he's not a big guy, you know. He's like my size, and he's playing how many minutes a night they had him going during that playoff run.
Yeah.
He had to eat so much palma pasta to keep some meat on the bones. He was skin and bones, so he had to eat as much palma pasta
carb loading
as he could. So I'm just going to let you know, Devin, right now, I have in my freezer upstairs a large frozen lasagna from Palma Pasta.
Amazing.
That is yours, courtesy of Palma Pasta.
Amazing. I need to carb load for this Leafs run.
Tomorrow night, buddy. We're gonna win. We're gonna beat Sens in 5, and then we'll go from there.
I mean, that was another time in Leafs history that I absolutely loved. Stumpy Thomas winning in overtime, the one-handed overtime winner. I thought Bob Cole was probably at the prime of his career calling those games. Yeah. Yannick Perreault winning in overtime against the Pens. I loved that team. Sergei Berezin,
Cujo. He's passed away, Sergei Berezin.
No,
I know. People are surprised.
He wore 94. Did he? 94?
Yes, he did 100%. Yeah. He didn't pass very often.
He tucked in the jersey?
I can't remember if he tucked in.
Or was that Ryan Smith?
I can't remember if he... Yeah. Well, Ryan Smith was the Oiler, but...
but
I know.
They were both 94.
You're right. Now, Berezin, I remember he loved to go one-man rushes.
I know. It was electric.
Not a great distributor of the puck.
No. But I loved those teams, and Pat Quinn, God bless him. I just... I remember watching that Eastern Conference final. Sundin tied it to force overtime. Artis Urbe
Gary Roberts was on these teams.
Gary Roberts.
Unbelievable.
Loved those guys.
Is Gary Volk on these teams?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes. You know what? You're bringing back some nice memories here. My goodness gracious. So how would covering something like the NBA championship in 2019, how would that compare to the Olympics? I don't know, watching Canada's 4x100 meter relay.
Oh, that's hard.
Were you at the 4x100 meter?
I was there. I interviewed. I talked to our
I know
guys.
this. I'm testing you.
Yeah,
I know this.
I know. I'm glad you are, because I had an out-of-body experience. Because what happens is... I think Mark Lee, by the way, is an outstanding commentator. To be able to work with him and that athletics crew was remarkable for me, because I think Mark Lee just meets the moment. We all rode to Stade de France that night, and we talked about their chances. We didn't like their chances, but I informed them all in the vehicle.
Like that the Americans can't get a baton transfer. Correct.
If you ask my partner, who is American, for a year I said Canada would beat the United States in Paris because they can't get the baton around. And he will go on the record and say that. I was with those guys in Bahamas at the World Relays, and I knew that quartet was ready. If they had a ticket in the final, they had a chance. They were in the outside lane. I'll never forget it. You're watching it, and as it's going, you're going, oh my God, like these guys are still in the lead. And then DeGrasse gets a baton, and I was not professional in the mix zone that day.
There's no cheering in the press box.
No, but there was, so Deanne Sauvé, who has since retired, but the great Radio Canada colleague, and our crews were right side by side, and we're high-fiving and whooping it up. And then all of a sudden we go, shit, we've got to do this interview, and they're coming to us live. And because we're the national broadcaster, we get them before anybody, before NBC, before BBC, before Olympics. They're coming right now. And I'll tell you, Mike, it took every fiber of my being to compose myself, because really all I wanted to do was just scream and high five them all.
No, you're like Joe Bowen, right? Bless you, boys.
I just wanted to, like, my heart is pounding. I'm so proud chested.
Yeah.
And now I have to be coherent, because I remember Donovan and the boys moment in Atlanta, and it was Ron McLean doing that interview. And I went, shit, this is going to live forever, and I have to be coherent. And you know what? It was probably the interview I loved the best. It was, I felt like something came over me where for 6 consecutive minutes of live television, I went to Aaron Brown, to Jerome Blake, to Brendan Rodney, to Andre DeGrasse, Andre again, and then back to Aaron Brown. And I said, you've always said each race is like a blank canvas, and this was a masterpiece. And he said, hang it in the Louvre. We're immortal. Wow. And I'll never forget it. I will never forget how I felt and how the light was hitting Stade de France on a sold-out night.
This is why I think you should be getting the call from CNN when they want to talk to a Canadian correspondent. That's why I feel like an imposter.
No.
Because look what you're doing over there on the world stage. My goodness.
It was beautiful. It was a great night for Canada. Canadians will remember that moment. And it's what gets me going back to the venue time and time again, because there is a promise that something magical might happen next.
Wow. Okay, so speaking of magical things that happened in Paris here. This is not Paris, but I'm going to play just a little clip to let the audience hear how it might sound.
America's record, Canadian record, World Junior record, and you've defended your title. What a proud moment for you. How did you do it?
I mean, going into this race, I knew that I got world champion last year, and that was kind of unexpected for me, and I was just trying to have fun, the most fun as possible, and kind of race as hard as I could and try to hold on that second half. It's so hard to turn and fly, but overall I'm happy with what I accomplished tonight.
Your mom told me before the race you needed to have fun and you needed to be fearless. Were you both of those in this race?
Yeah, for sure. I think 200 fly is all about being fearless. It's probably one of the toughest events there is, but at the same time, if you manage the first half well, then you know that you'll be strong in the second half. You just got to trust your training, and I think I accomplished that tonight.
You become only the second Canadian ever to win 3 gold medals. You're rewriting the history book. Kylie Moss, the other. What does that mean to you?
It means everything. I mean, Kylie is someone that I've always looked up to since a very young age, and now knowing her on a very personal level, she's one of the nicest and sweetest people you ever meet, and she's accomplished grown the sport Canadian swimming so much. So I've always looked up to her, and I continue to do so, and just to be a part of that is really special.
All of these medals are going to mean different things to you. The other day you told me it's not about how you fall, it's the bounce back. You're back with a gold medal.
Yeah, I mean, after that 4 free, I knew that I had to turn things around quickly, as I had so many other events that I was really looking forward to, and I wasn't going to let it get me down. So I was just really excited, because 200 fly is definitely one of my favorite events. So yeah, I think it's all about mindset, especially at these long meets.
Last question, you got a moment finally with mom and dad. Brooke back home is already posted on Instagram. So many Canadians are waking up celebrating your world championship gold medal. A moment to shout out to them.
Yeah, it means everything from support, especially my family. They mean the absolute world to me, and seeing my parents during the medal ceremony was really special, and I know my sister is cheering back home, but all my friends, family, everyone on Instagram that supports me, it truly means the world, and I can always feel their support.
What's your relationship like with Summer McIntosh? She seems to really trust you.
my partner says I'm like her uncle now. I mean, I've documented every big race in her life since she has bursted onto the scene.
And that's a lot of races.
It's a lot of races. And that was Fukuoka, by the way. And she came in 4th place in the opening night, and she was massively disappointed. The New Zealander out-touched her, I think mainly because Summer was so stunned at her performance in the 400 free on opening night. And she reeled it back in. And then, of course, she wins the 200 fly, which is the same race that her mom, Jill McIntosh, Jill Horsted at the 1984 Olympics in LA competed in. And I, to have a front row seat to watch who I believe is going to be the greatest athlete ever in Canadian history, and it's not even going to be close.
Right.
And to have her trust me and send me notes and, I know that when she walks over and she walks by everybody else and isn't going to do an interview, but always stops for me, I think that's important. And again, like I was saying earlier, Mike, where I'm not overly objective when it comes to our Canadians. I want Summer, when she's at the pool, I want her to feel like she doesn't have to worry about what might be coming her way from me. I'm going to ask her tough questions if she has a poor performance, but those are few and far between. We are in the presence of greatness, and it's my hope that Canada can start to appreciate in not every 4 years, all the time, how truly remarkable she is. And I can tell you right now, she's about to add another event to her program. She's going to win 5 gold medals in LA.
You heard it here first. 5 gold medals in LA.
Yeah.
Then it's going to blow up that clip I have of Jane Siberry. Of course, it's already blown up, obviously, because Summer's already the most decorated Olympian in Canadian history. Am I right?
Not yet.
Okay, who has that title right now?
It's a tie now between Andre DeGrasse and Penny Oleksiak.
I just couldn't remember who caught Penny.
Yeah.
DeGrasse caught Penny. Yeah. But Summer, after LA, will have that title, assuming she stays healthy.
She will win 5 gold medals, and it is looking... I'm giving you some inside stuff.
I love this. I'm an Olympics head here.
It is looking like she is getting closer to make a decision to join Bob Bowman, Michael Phelps' former coach. And you can only imagine how crazy that's going to get. If there's anybody that knows how to handle a program the size of the one Summer is building for LA, it is Michael Phelps' former coach, Bob Bowman. That's what's going to happen, and she's going to win 5 gold medals in LA.
Let's hope we're not at war with the United States. It'll blow up the whole plan, right?
They won't like her. They might try and make her American.
Oh, you're getting me angry here.
It won't happen. Summer is a generational talent.
Yeah.
I can tell you now, you're the first to learn this publicly. I will be in Singapore this summer at the World Aquatics Championships, the first one since Fukuoka, 2023. And Summer will win 5 gold medals there.
Summer's killing us. You remember this Tragically Hip song? Bang,
yes.
bang, bang,
I just want to hear you continue.
No, you don't. Yeah. Trust me. Careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're unbelievably interesting and easy to talk to, which is a very high compliment, but it means I just glanced over and saw I've already taken 80 minutes. So I will cook with gas.
Okay. Rapid fire.
You know what I got? I was watching the Conan O'Brien show in 1993, and he said, cooking with gas. And it just somehow implanted in my head where I've been saying it ever since.
I think I don't even really know with fire, but cooking with gas.
I know Conan likes the old-fashioned.
I love it.
Expression. So I've been using it. I don't quite understand it, but I love the expression cooking with gas. Okay.
Let's cook.
So rapidly, we're going to do this.
Okay.
I'm going to tell the listenership that the promo code TorontoMike10 at silverwax.ca saves you 10%. Silverwax makes pro-grade auto care and cleaning technology easy for everyone to use. They have kits for beginners, experts, or professionals. So if you want a nice, clean car, and if you think cleaning is a bit of a hassle, trust me, Silverwax is the solution. They're proudly Canadian. just like Devin and I, proudly Canadian. So use the promo code TorontoMike10. Speaking of proudly Canadian, shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. Devin, this is a measuring tape courtesy of Ridley Funeral Home.
That is going to be put to good use because I'm trying to renovate.
Oh.
Well, not really.
Well, you're doing something handy
Decorate.
there. You can decorate. It's not decorate, renovate. We're splitting hairs here.
Okay.
You know, it's all the same thing. Recyclemyelectronics.ca. That's where you go if you have old electronics or cables. You don't throw it in the garbage. You go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, put in your postal code, find out where you can drop that off to be properly recycled. And Building Toronto's Skyline. This is a podcast from Nick Iones. I get to kind of co-host this thing. It's kind of fun. And every couple of Fridays, Nick comes over. We record a couple of episodes. I urge you to subscribe and listen. I have a question, Devin, from Moose Grumpy. Actually, it's a comment. She says, he seems like such a great guy. So let me just tell Moose, I think he is a great guy. Like, I've spent like 80 minutes with the guy. I think he's a great guy. Moose Grumpy again. Athletes are so excited to see him after their events. He really seems to make a connection. Maggie McNeil always has him hold her glasses while she swam. Yes.
That is true.
Yes, that's cool.
I love that. Thank you for that. I want them to feel that way. I want them to want to talk to me in the good and the bad. And
the ugly.
And the ugly. And let me tell you, the night the men's 4x100 meter relay team won, Sarah Mitten bombed out in the shot put. And we went there thinking it would be Sarah in her golden moment. And as a journalist, you think about all the things that might happen. And I didn't expect that to happen. And then all of a sudden, I have to be there with her in this crushing moment for her. And she delivered this most beautiful interview, and it makes me cry. It actually makes me cry at the Olympics. And I go home at whatever time it is, on whatever few hours of sleep I got, and I cry because they are so giving of themselves and they want it so badly, and then they're so vulnerable with me, and that's all I would ever want.
You make them feel safe so they could be...
Yes.
I try to do the same thing, but you have to do it in 2 to 5 minutes. I get 90 minutes to get you comfy.
And not knowing what's going to happen.
What you're doing is much more difficult, and you're doing it in front of millions of passionate Canadian sports fans.
I just never want to screw those moments up. I have so much respect and fear all at the same time.
But you know your shit, and you're empathetic human being, so it would be difficult for you to screw it up, I would think.
Thank you. That's what prepared. I lean on. That's prepared. I try to be prepared.
You came to the right place. I'm here to pump your tires.
Thank you.
Mike from K-Dub wrote in, the way Devin provides a voice and a spotlight for our amateur athletes is an example of the CBC's important role in telling Canada's story. Can you please ask him if there's a favorite interview or segment he has done to introduce an otherwise unsung hero to his audience?
It would be Marie Wright, a wheelchair curler from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, who in 2018 made her Paralympic debut. A mother of 4, her husband left her after she became quadriplegic, and he left her high and dry in a wheelchair with 4 young daughters. She said, I thought I would never amount to anything in my life. And there she was in Pyeongchang with the daughters she raised, cheering their mom on, and she won a bronze medal, a beautiful smile. And she's an example of somebody I think Canadians should know.
I love your passion for the Paralympic Games, which seems equal to your passion for the Olympic Games, and I only wish that were true for all citizens of this sovereign, fiercely independent nation.
Listen, to me, the Paralympics are the ultimate in Paralympians are what it means to be a champion. They had a story in their lives that they thought was going to go a certain way. It didn't. They pivoted and they reimagined what sport and success can look like in their life. A message to all of us: when the story doesn't go the way we think it will, Mike, we have a choice. They chose greatness.
Wow, man, I'm going to tell CNN to call you next time. Okay, so Hazardous. I just said, hey, do you got a question for Devin? And Hazardous, I don't know the gender of this person, says, all curling, 60 minutes of local curling club reviews from the Granite Club in the Bridle Path.
Granite. Granite.
Thank you. Obviously, they don't let me in the bridle path. They take a look at my
I was going to let it slide, but
taxes
there are granite curling clubs all over the country.
Not granite. Okay, I'm an idiot. I'm obviously not a curling guy. But from the Granite Club in the bridle path to Royal Canadian across from the old Jilly's location. Now you're talking my language, okay? We don't have 60 minutes for this, but you want to shout out a local curling club that you enjoy curling at?
Yeah, the Nutana Curling Club in Saskatoon, which is about 10 minutes from my parents' place. It has some of the best ice in the country, and it usually is home to either the Briar or Scotty's representative in Saskatchewan. But I do agree, if I had more time, I would go from coast to coast to coast, and I would do a review, because curling rinks are the church, are the party place, are the places where there were weddings, where you gathered after funerals, where you gathered for birthdays. They were the heartbeat on the speckled prairies, the frozen tundra. They were the gathering places. That's what a curling rink is.
And lest we forget, when Dave Hodge flips the pen because he's so frustrated that CBC's going to, I guess, the national instead of broadcasting the overtime.
Right.
Earlier that day, the same thing happened with the Briar, and he was watching with Bob Cole, as Bob Cole rooted for his beloved Newfoundland club, Newfoundland team.
Bob went to the Briar.
Yes.
Twice. Bob was a great curler.
I almost had a phoner with Bob, and it didn't quite work out, but I love my Bob Cole. Jammed. I thought, man, I was so upset that Rogers, because he didn't retire on his own.
No.
Rogers said... I remember I had Scott Moore over to talk about it. Scott Moore retired him.
Yeah.
He wasn't done yet.
I know.
Let him die calling a game.
You know, I wrote a letter to Bob Cole when I was in grade 7, letting him know how much I adored him. I know we got to go. He never got back to me. I don't hold it against him. He's a busy man. But then I was with him for one of the last playoff series he ever called, Sens and Pens. And I went up into his booth and we had a chat, and I said, it should be a great night. He said, it shouldn't be anything. We're going to find out what happens here tonight, but it shouldn't be anything. I'll never forget that. I never say it should be a great game tonight anymore since that back and forth.
Because you don't know what you might...
You don't know. He said, why should it be? It could be a blowout. Why it shouldn't be anything.
A little pedantic, but I get the sentiment.
I know.
Okay,
Well,
you know. If it wasn't Bob Cole, I'd be maybe what an asshat. Come on, okay. So Al Grego, who of course hosts Yes We Are Open, you're already going to subscribe and listen.
Yeah.
He just says, tell Devin I got a private tour of Mosaic Stadium.
Amazing.
And it was impressive.
It is. It is our cathedral on the prairies. Out of that prairie dirt rose this gathering place for diehard Rider fans. I'm so glad you got there. It's, of course, where I'll be at for my bachelor party.
Yeah, we're going to close with a little bit about that. Absolutely. I'm going to ask you again. We're going to go back to you being a proud gay man because...
Yes.
I mean this as an ally.
Thank you.
When the NHL had, they would have, was it
Pride Night?
Pride Night.
Yeah.
Thank you. I knew. I was trying to remember. Do they play a special? I was trying to remember do they wear special uniforms? I couldn't quite. Was it just in warm-ups?
They had. Well, it was sometimes it was warm-ups.
Right.
Some people didn't want to wear it. Some people did. Well,
that's okay. So that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
I was a big James Reimer fan.
Yeah.
Okay, I had a T-shirt, Optimus Rhyme, that I wore with great pride. We had a 4-1 lead in that Game 7, but we won't talk about that.
Right,
okay?
well.
But I love James Reimer. Just loved him, even though, it didn't work out for that Leafs team. But okay. Reimer, on religious grounds, refused to participate in Pride Night because it was against his religion. So as an ally, I was so pissed I threw out the T-shirt. I never wore the Optimus Rhyme shirt again. I'm not touching this fucking T-shirt. How did you... Because you talked earlier, but I said get off X or something. He says like a punch to the gut. What's it like when you learn that James Reimer's not even going to don a jersey in support?
Yeah. It's hard. And you know what? Even Ivan Provorov from the Flyers, there was all of that. And then John Tortorella went and made space for him and made it okay. It is hard. It is really hard. And you know what? It has been challenging to be an openly proud gay sports reporter. I get a lot of hate mail. I get a lot of awful DMs in all of my social platforms and emails. And yet, we march on. we march on, because there were many, many, many before me that had a much harder road than I have today. And so I am heartened and emboldened to go forward, to know that I believe we're going to be on the right side of history, but it is hard and it affects me. It affects my mental health, and depending on where I'm at emotionally, Mike, depends on how much I'm able to engage in that.
And it can help, because statistically speaking, there are gay men playing NHL hockey today.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
0 are out of the closet or public about their sexuality.
And I know, I can see why. I can understand
why too.
Yeah.
But how do I put this? Like, you know, you got to break some eggs to make the omelet. Like, you got to come out so others will, coming up through the ranks, will feel comfortable that they too could be themselves.
Yeah.
Everybody just wants to be themselves.
Yeah.
It's horrific that people have to hide their true selves in order to be accepted in their, field.
I think the last piece of that, because there's this conversation, when is the first out pro gay person going to come out? And I think the last piece of that is the business model around that. And I actually think it falls on corporations and private enterprise and owners supporting that, because I think, if you look at Michael Sam, his NFL experience, where is he now?
Right.
He was swept aside. Nobody wanted to touch that or be a part of that, because I still believe it actually affects the bottom line. And when money's involved, that's where it ends.
That league is a particular tire fire when it comes to such enlightenment.
So it hurts my heart, and I can understand why nobody wants to be the example.
But on the sports media side, you and Scott MacArthur, not even active in sports media right now, as far as I know. Like, he had a podcast with Richard Griffin on Blue Jays, but he stepped down from that. So I know he did tease me with I have something coming up and I'll come on and talk about it, but it hasn't been announced yet. So I don't know what his next venture is going to be, but I don't believe he's active in sports media right now. So it's up, you're the only Canadian gay man, openly gay man, to be reporting on sports in this country, as far as I know.
And I'm not going anywhere.
You're not going anywhere. Okay, so you are going somewhere. We're going to kick you out soon.
I know, it's election night.
We're almost done. Okay, last. So I just had Andrew Scott on. He's the drummer for Sloan.
Okay.
And Banjo Dunk, who's a great FOTM himself, was telling me that he played hockey for a decade with Andrew Scott and only heard him say 2 sentences in the entire decade. And he couldn't believe I got 90 minutes out of him. So I'm just curious, because we heard how open Summer is with you. Like, she was so open in talking to you. Have you ever had that athlete after their performance that basically you were like trying to squeeze lemon out of that juice? Like, weren't very talkative?
No. And do you want to know why?
Tell me.
Because I do this thing that I don't think many sports journalists do. I'm never out there to play gotcha with them. When I can see that an athlete might give me a 1 or 2 word answer, before we go on the air, I say, do you want a minute? I think you want a minute. And I let them just take a breath. And I go, I know you're disappointed. And then all of a sudden there's a trust that happens there.
Yep.
Because the only way you're going to get somebody that doesn't respond is when it's been a shitty performance. And so, right there, I'm showing them I see them. I know what they must be going through. And then what it does, Mike, it actually gives me some creative license to go in a little bit more with them. I never want to tell them how they're feeling, but I'll glean on something that I watched in the 30 seconds from when they completed that event to when they get to me. And I'm basically reading everything about what they're sharing through their body language. My superpower is being energetically aligned with every athlete I speak to. And within 30 seconds, I'm exactly eye to eye and right there with them.
Well, that's why you're very, very good at this. Very good at this. So Last 3 quick hits.
Okay.
One is Hey Ref on the live stream wants to know if Penny is done. Will we see Penny in LA?
Penny wants to go to LA. Whether Penny can make it to LA is a completely different question,
Right.
so it's a good one. You will see her also competing this weekend. I just saw the psych sheets, the heat sheets for the TYR Pro Series in Fort Lauderdale, and Penny is competing. I haven't nailed down which events, but I saw her name. Penny does like to register for these things, and sometimes we'll do one or maybe none at all. So we'll see when she's in the pool. But Penny wants to continue to swim, and I still believe that Penny is one of the most naturally gifted athletes in our country's history. If Penny gets serious about swimming, and I'm not saying she hasn't always, but there have been times when it hasn't been the priority, and she shared that with me. If she gets serious about it and really hones in on her training, I think Penny could play a crucial role in our relay teams in LA.
Well, good. We need her to get back to
We
being
do.
the most
We
technical,
really
although
need her.
Sounds like summer's coming anyway. So,
No,
okay.
but we are relay teams.
Relays,
we could
right.
be great.
Right.
So,
right. Love
yeah.
it. Okay. Second last thing. Would you say a few words about Scott Russell, who you'll no longer be working with?
Yeah. Well, listen, you talked about my love and support of the Paralympics. I think before anybody was caring about the Paralympics, it was Scott who told us that Paralympians matter. Paralympic sport matters. I'll never forget watching Scott do a live opening to the Briar in 2004 at what was called Sass Place. I was a CBC intern, and I watched Scott walk up the middle of the ice with that big CBC Sports intro that we learned to love. And I watched Scott, and I went, I want to be him. And all those years later, I was working beside him. And it was a privilege to watch him do his craft, and it was a privilege to watch Scott work, toil away, and write on flashcards. My God, I've never seen somebody write on flashcards more than Scott. And that's why he knew everything. He knew everything. He had an anecdote or a fact about any European runner back in 1958 in the Rome Marathon. And it's because nobody outworks Scott.
Well, you're the heir apparent. You know this, right?
I don't know. But
Well, I do, okay?
It would be an honor. Stay tuned for how our crew will look in Milano Cortina. We're less than a year away from another games, and perhaps the stakes have never been so high, with nationalism at an all-time high on Election Day in Canada.
We got a taste of that at the Four Nations Cup.
I think we might see a repeat.
That was bananas. Okay, well, I'll be tuning in. I'll be checking you out. When is the wedding day?
I got to remember. August 29th, but we're going to go to City Hall, do it at City Hall August 15th, and then have a big party at the Great Hall on Queen West on August 29th. 2 days later, we're honeymooning in Tokyo.
This is a good guy you're hooked up with?
Yeah. He's amazing.
Is he good?
Well, listen,
Gotta make sure he's good enough for my Devin here.
He puts up with me. He keeps me sane and keeps me sharp, holds me accountable, and I can't wait to celebrate our love.
Well, he's a lucky man, and congrats to you.
Thank you,
And
Mike.
enjoy this bachelor party in Regina. You're going to see CFL football because you're going big.
Hey, there's no place like home.
Well, that's where your heart is.
Home, my heart is always in the prairies.
Sounds like a song. We should write a song. My heart is always in the prairies. Devin, you were amazing. You notice I have been afraid to say your last name since the intro because I can't remember.
Heroux.
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 Hooray.
Hooray. Hooray for Devin Heroux. Thanks for doing this, man.
Mike, you are so good.
Well,
you're
you're
so
good.
good. I'm really
raised my
glad
game for you.
I'm really glad we made this happen. Your shirt's incredible. 1976.
Yeah.
Do you know the men's 4x400 meter relay national record still dates back to the 1976 Olympics? That's how long that record has stood the test of time.
Well, that tells me it wasn't good enough to win a gold because nobody did that Olympics.
It wasn't.
That's unbelievable. By the way, of all the facts in this country at the Olympics, the most wild to me is that we had to host a third time to win a gold medal. No golds in Calgary, no golds in Montreal.
It was bleak.
That's unbelievable.
And now look at us.
Now we're world beaters.
I think we are becoming a summer sporting nation more than we are a winter sporting nation. That's my hot take.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,681st. Is that right? Yeah. 1,006, because I dropped a CNN behind the scenes thing, so my numbers all got messed up. But this is absolutely episode 1,681. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. As we speak, Instagram won't go away, I guess. Dr. Heroux, Heroux. just find him there. And you're still on Twitter until I talk you out of it. That's Devin _, and then that last name I butcher every time. Thanks to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery. That's Palma Pasta. That's Moneris. That's Silver Wax. That's RecycleMyElectronics.ca. That's Building Toronto Skyline. That's Ridley Funeral Home. See you all Wednesday when my special guest is CHFI radio veteran Paul Fisher. See you all then.